direction of region or ISAC as a whole can align with it, and we can build up more collaboration, and which has been very successful in the past couple of months. And so right now we have this Steph, as well as like we have Stefan representing from ISAC Alumni Asia Pacific. So both of them are going to be here talking to you, and we are very much looking forward to hear what they have on for us. And yeah, I'll pass to Sumi.
I just love that. Thank you so much, Asiru. I will go ahead and share my screen. I hope. Hang on, I will try again. Just give me 1 second. Why am I not surprised? Okay. We will get there, don't worry. Okay. Can everybody see that? Finally. Okay. Look, as you can tell, I'm really excited to be here. This is a session where we sort of planned it quite carefully. So I'm going to, I've asked the folk who are organizing the session to remind me every 10 minutes to make sure that we're on track with time, because I'd love there to be time at the end for a bit of a conversation. Okay, so I gave the title to this as A2A, New Impetus for the Lifelong Global Movement. And I'll explain more about this as we go. So you've seen the journey. The reason we played that is because the journey is an example now of a content that we create on a monthly basis in the region. And each one is intended to start a conversation. And obviously that one is about the lifelong journey. It's about the fact that, you know, this is all about not only having the ability, but the responsibility to affect change around us. And you'll find, I don't know if you noticed already, like every conversation that's taking place is already having consequences. So even that video, when I first shared that with the team only a week ago, the only logo at the front was ISAC Alumni Asia Pacific. I've already got that accepted by the other 3 regions, which is why their logos ended up on it as well. And as of yesterday, the global organization adopted it as well. So now it's got all 5 logos on it. There's already an agreement that we will do that once a month and brand it for everybody else to save them the trouble, and they will do others for us. So it's just amazing how quickly all this stuff changes. Okay, so this looks a little daunting, but don't worry. There are just 3 areas here that we'll focus on more. I won't read through it. Could I just ask you, please, or maybe I can just, yes, just get a double check here. I'd like to know, of the people in the room, how many of you are incoming and how many of you are incumbent? Or maybe the easy way to describe that is for Isuru just to tell me.
So you give MCP likes and MCP carrots.
Yes.
Yes. Most of us are incoming.
Okay, all good. Okay, so that's my story. I'll go through briefly. I was born in Hong Kong, which did help, in fact, when I helped to found AIESEC Mainland of China. University of Sydney, and I saw Michael is in the room as well. Hi, Michael. It's great to see you. And Michael and I have known each other. We don't know each other well, but we have known each other for at least a couple of years now, because I met him originally in Sydney, I think, first. I was MCP in 79-80. PAI, yeah, it's just a name change. It was called at the time Secretary General. I was actually in Brussels for 2 years, though. I went and took a trip to China in 82. I'm now president of AIESEC Alumni Asia Pacific. And what has become also relevant to this conversation is that there are a bunch of subcommittees that have been set up globally. And of course, I volunteer to be the chair of the one on this topic. So A2A for us is alumni to AIESEC, or AIESEC to alumni don't care. In a sense, it's what you guys are calling the Lifelong Connection, LLC, same sort of thing. All right. For me, this is all about building a culture, building a tribe. So as the guys in the regional office have already discovered, for me, it's really important to have open and honest conversations. We are absolutely in the same nation, if you like, for this stuff. And there's no point beating around the bush. For me, this is one more example of helping to build the momentum of what is a very important initiative for both organizations. And at the very end, you'll find none of this counts unless there is some specific action that follows. So they asked me to share a few anecdotes. So all I'm going to do is give you a taste of things that we could talk about if there was more time, and I'll focus on one. So my time as PAI was a very eventful one. So I have stories to tell you about spies that were uncovered from AIESEC trainees, coups that took place around the world. There were at least 4 of them in my year alone. Tanks. Yes, so we had one member of the team deal with getting through a tank cordon of a university. China, which is what I'm going to focus on. I met my wife, my now former wife, unfortunately, but still my wife, through AIESEC. And yes, anyone who tells me it's not a marriage organization is kidding themselves. I should tell you, just this morning in the session, there were at least 4 of the people in that room who had met their husbands or wives through AIESEC. And I think that's only in the little bit of time we had to talk about it. So that you understand, in my closing remarks this morning to the global conversation, I reminded everyone that the same values and reasons they joined AIESEC in the first place are applying right now when they desire to get more involved in the alumni as well. So on the left, that is I won't read it. I'm sure you'll get access to this later on. But the bottom line is that that's a time when the primary focus of the organization's jobs, careers, right? I was MCP of Australia, and I wrote that, and that went into our annual report. And that also influenced this sort of momentum that was building to be much more outward looking. And so when I saw that in the meantime, you know, there was this huge focus on the UN SDGs, in that sense, for me, you might think that was revolutionary. For me, nothing had changed. These things have been driving AIESECers forever. Just a couple of quick things because this is all about the extension to China, but it reflects on the era as well. So back in 81, yeah, nothing's new about that. It was the world's largest non-political student-run organization. We had 60 member countries, became 61. The country membership, the actual in the constitution, required a country to have 5 traineeships to become eligible to become a full member. And when I talk about traineeships, we're talking about real jobs back in those days. There were no communist member countries. There were some that were sort of borderline, but Soviet Union wasn't in it. A number of Eastern Bloc countries, and certainly the People's Republic of China was not in it. That's the doomsday clock. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. The doomsday clock, if you have a look at part of it, in 1981, we were 4 minutes from the doom of the earth. And this was in my generation, we were very conscious of this. So, you know, back in the day, the Berlin Wall was still up. There was the Cold War, really heavy duty. And so this was the time when ISEC, it wasn't political, but certainly it reflected the fact that there were parts of the world that were just, that could not involve themselves in an organization like ISEC. So to cut a long story short, we altered the constitution of ISEC over a 9-month period to be able to open it up on the basis that we want to supply our services to as many people as possible in as many countries as possible. The Shanghai Communique had taken place in China in 1971. And see that hotel there, the Jinjiang, come back to that in a second. So I took an extension mission to China at the end of my term, and yes, that is me on the Great Wall of China. I was there for 3 weeks, hosted by the All China Youth Federation. And yes, it did take guts. This was me on behalf of the team contacting the Chinese government just to explore the possibilities. And then sure enough, a few years ago, I was invited back to China to be acknowledged as its founder and presented to 2 conferences, one of the alumni, one of ISEC. And yes, that's me in front of me. And I guess the point of all that is that all the things you do at the moment have consequences. Every minute you spend in your capacities, whether it's volunteer or paid for this organization, has a ripple effect that lasts, and long after you're forgotten, those consequences will be in place. Okay, let's focus on this. So I'm a big proponent now of this. I use this phrase all the time. It's a lifelong global movement. There's one nation, 2 tribes. They are independent but intrinsically connected. This is a lifelong journey, and together there's a much greater impact. I want to focus on some of the initiatives that have taken place in recent months. So first of all, this is happening not only in Asia Pacific, it is happening around the world as well. And I guess there are 3 things here I want to focus on. One is the pandemic. The pandemic has done all kinds of things, but it has, if nothing else, it has resulted on the need for greater cooperation between both organizations, and especially ISEC. I mean, the reality is this has been a huge challenge for ISEC. And I think that's almost helped to lower the barriers between the 2 organizations, because everything going virtual also has made greater cooperation much more possible. And certainly it's having a huge positive effect on the alumni being built as its own tribe around the world. And as Asiru and the team know, my approach and the approach that I'm encouraging the alumni to take globally is this. This is what we are doing and planning to do. You are welcome to participate if and when you wish. In other words, there's no pressure. No one's telling ISEC what they should do. All the alumni should do is say, here we are, this is what we're doing, and we're opening the door for you to take advantage of it in whatever way you think is appropriate. The third issue here is the symbols of this new cooperation. And I want to make a point here, which is that for those of you in the room, you can be unbelievably proud of your regional office team. So I haven't told them that I would say this, but it's absolutely true. Every time we make sort of a little steps forward, it takes a lot of guts for people to do so. And it took a great deal of guts for the regional office to embrace myself and my team when we said, okay, guys, we're here and we'd love to help if we can. the answer could have just been, yeah, no, thank you. We got this under control. But instead of that, there was an honest conversation, and it has resulted in already a whole lot of positive things taking place, not only within the region, but around the world. That sentence there is on the document that is on the next screen. But in case you can't read it on the next screen, there's a joint communique that was signed within the region on the 22nd of February. It has now already been duplicated in Latin America. It is going to get duplicated in the other regions as well. It'll always take a little bit of time. But also what's important is that the contents of that document have been accepted globally by the alumni community, and there will be a conversation at an international level with AIESEC as well. So one of the reasons for that document is that we do this in the hope that this initiative inspires NAAs and MCs in the region to mirror this model of cooperation and alignment at the national and local levels. So that's the document, and it's important. It's not a legislation, it's only symbolic, but still, I would encourage you to get a copy of that at some point and to read it properly, because there was some time that went into it, and it does explain the why. It's mainly about the why. Why on earth would two different communities want to combine their efforts and cooperate and all the rest of it? But I'm very proud of it, and you guys should as well. And I can assure you, it has put, there's a lot of recognition from around the world of the fact that the culture within Asia Pacific enabled this to take place. So I want to focus now on what exists in AAAP, AIESEC Alumni Asia Pacific. And the first thing I wanted to say to you is that, in all honesty, it's in its infancy. You'll find that while the alumni has existed, even in a semi-formal sense, for many years in some countries, the truth of it is it's not perfect. And it's taken a while to try to work out what its role, what its space should be. So in my view, if we're honest, it's still very much in its infancy. It's clearly evolving. The potential is huge. If there are 35,000 people in AIESEC in any one time, of which let's say 10 to 15, let's say 10,000 come in, 10,000 go out, there is now an alumni community that numbers around 2 million people. Of that, a tiny part is engaged. But one of the messages from me to the alumni community is that we have to focus on that huge potential to make a serious difference. And it is growing quickly at the moment. I'll focus on three things within this. One is the team for Asia Pacific. One is the NAAs. And I really want that to be the beginning of a conversation with everybody in the room, because there are things, as the team has already learned, that I can help you with when it comes to your own relationship with the NAA and your country. And then the programs. So for the team, this is the team we have in place for Asia Pacific, and I'll show you the symbolism in this in a minute. So I'm not claiming your guys as part of my team, not at all. But the symbolism of this is important for the alumni especially. So you'll find that right now we've got, 11 people in the Asia Pacific team. They come from Hong Kong, India, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Australia, Philippines, Cambodia, and Belgium, but living in Sydney for many years. And you'll find it's a very diverse group. And if you look at the ages as well, I'm the dinosaur in the group, but I hope you can see by now I'm pretty young at heart. And it goes right through the spectrum. So Stefan is one of the younger members of the group, so is Gaurav. And Bill Che has just joined the group. He's still president of AIESEC Alumni in Cambodia, but is doing an unbelievable job. And of course, if I see someone doing an unbelievable job, I'm going to want to recruit them. The symbolism of this is important for the alumni. So I'm trying to change the culture. I want the alumni to see that there is now a real relationship with AIESEC, which is why Asuru and Sumi are there. And you'll find this is reflecting in programs, which I'll get to shortly. So I'm referring to them as part of our team, but certainly I treat them with the respect that they deserve. There's nothing that we do that I would keep from them. There's nothing that we do that I wouldn't share with them. So the communication has been institutionalized. Okay, these NAAs. Now, so National Alumni Associations. Now again, this is all changing very quickly. And I have to say also the pandemic has hit this as well, just like it hit AIESEC. If you have a look at this process, The 17, so the ones in the first column and the beginning of the second column, those are countries, some of which have been well established for a long time, some of which are basically folk who I reached out to a couple of years ago and said, if you've got the guts to stand up and represent your country, then come on board and let's see what we can work out. Onboarded actually means that those 17 have all signed a document of some kind or another, which has made them a full member of the global alumni organization. The ones from 18 to 23 are no less substantive, if you like, but they have not yet at this point signed that onboarding agreement. The one on the right, those are ones that we've targeted as being prospective. And essentially that list originally was any country that we weren't already, didn't already have an acknowledged, recognized group, but where AIESEC has been at some point. And there are a couple of things that are very interesting here. If you look at Papua New Guinea, for example, AIESEC's never been Papua New Guinea has never been a member of AIESEC. But the truth of it is, there are former AIESECers living in Papua New Guinea. That's an example of a country that may not be a member of AIESEC, but could absolutely become a member of the Alumni Association. And when you have a country where you've now stopped activities, that might reduce your numbers by one, but there'll be a pool of alumni there where it's absolutely appropriate for them to become part of the alumni organization. So when you have a look at this, you'll find, and maybe we can come back to this at the very end with the conversation, because any of you in the room, if you don't already have a good relationship with the leaders of the alumni community, I can help you and my team can help you. Really, we can. If, for example, and this is where the conversations have to be very honest, if there's a problem, share it with Isuru and his team, and they can share it with us. Because, my view is very simple. This is about, I don't care about the past with this stuff. All I care about is that there are two communities right now, they are intricately linked. And if there's anything that the alumni can do to assist AIESEC, then bloody hell, they should do it. And it's all about building trust and respect and things like that, but there are ways we can help. Just to give you a little glimpse of this, so I saw Vincent, who I've not met. Vincent, you're in the room from New Zealand. And I've had a conversation with Kashali. And that coincides with the conversation I've opened up with the alumni in Australia and New Zealand, where the alumni in New Zealand, it does exist. There actually is a president. There is a little group there. But right now, you'd have to be honest and say it's inactive. But by creating a bubble between Australia and New Zealand, where the alums in New Zealand can co-host events that Australia is already doing, makes a lot of sense. And that, it's like chicken and the egg. As soon as you've actually got activity, you get greater engagement. Just like if you get greater engagement, you get more activity. So there might be a conversation that I can open up between the two alumni presidents together with the Australian president. So that's like Michael and Vincent. And you just never know how these things can work. And as life works in very funny ways, that's a conversation I can start for you if you want. So I'll leave that for the moment, and we can come back to that perhaps at the very end in questions and answers. But if you've got a question about your own country's alumni, please feel free to raise it when we get to the Q&As. And not only then, it might be next week or next month, I don't care. We're very much accessible to you. Okay, we have created now programs in the region on this basis, that they're sustainable, purposeful, relevant, impactful, and it's about making choices and setting priorities. This is a very simple way of explaining the way we have now categorized what we wish to do. Networking, continuous learning, mentoring, jobs, opportunities, peer support, and social impact. Now, I'm not going to spend time going through these one by one, but as I explained to the group this morning and last night in the global planning, there is nothing that we're doing that can't be opened up to do with AIESEC if AIESEC wishes. So far in the region, we have focused on just a couple of these, which I'll now come to. So this is now building the movement. you can categorize the relationship between the two organizations by looking at operations and by looking at programs and other activities. So in terms of operations, there are clearly things happening already very quickly. The very fact that I'm referring to folk from ISEC as being sort of affiliates of things that we're doing in the alumni, and certainly if you chose to, you could easily do the same thing in reverse, is very symbolic. The very fact that we're now having, like in the last, let's say in the last 3 months, in the previous 12 months, hell, in the previous decade, there would have been as many conversations between alumni on a regional level and ISEC that could fit on one hand. In the last 3 months, whether it's with Isuru and Sumi, or with Tony, or with Prayog, you know, there have been many, many, many conversations. The communication has now been institutionalized in some fashion, which is wonderful. Conferences, the very fact that I'm speaking to you guys. Now, this goes in both directions. I would like to make sure that always, when there's a significant alumni event, there's always someone from ISEC in the region talking there. The calendars. Stefan is the guru for IT in our team, and he's created this incredible space on Notion for the team. And you'll find that we're building calendars there. So for example, when someone from the team would say to us, okay, well, we've got an event coming up in 2 months' time, can you help us spread the news? Then we're there, we're getting more and more ready to be able to do that. The one thing I want to focus on in terms of operations is this question of the automatic transition from ISEC to the Alumni Association. And this is one of those things that has to become a cornerstone of what goes on here, because it's important for ISEC to be able to say on campus when you're recruiting, like you've got so much competition now. You've got competition of other organizations who are in the entrepreneurial space. And that's not just in terms of providing a similar service, but you've got them recruiting your potential leaders. So it's of huge value if one day you can say to someone who's looking at joining any organization at campus, that one of the benefits for joining ISEC is actually the alumni organization that follows, whether it's networking or jobs or impact or God knows what. And most of the organizations that ISEC competes with on campus cannot say that. So that's an important reason why a strong alumni can help ISEC, if only in that way. And the other, of course, is that ISEC is the feeder for the alumni organization. So one of the points I made this morning, recommendations in the global planning, was that this is also a conversation that is complex. It's not simple. It is complex. It's very important, and it deserves an effort. So I'm encouraging AAI to have a serious ongoing conversation with ISEC International about this particular one. Not only this, but about this one as well. In terms of programs, I split it into 2 groups, really. One is the things that alumni do for ISEC or with ISEC. On the one hand, yes, we can supply speakers and sponsors whenever we're asked. That is what it is. But I want to focus on the last one of that list, which is to co-manage and co-promote programs for the benefit of both communities to maximize impact. Now, that's the same group that I showed you before, right? And I've split it into 6 different slides here. We'll only focus on 1 or 2. This is networking. So that the rest of you know, we now do a monthly, what we call an alumni. Our topic so far this year, and this is new. We started this on a regional basis in December. So one of them was all about mental and emotional health through the pandemic. And it was a really beautiful conversation. It was more like a fireside chat, and it was significant. We've also had another one, well, we've had a bunch of them on different things, but one of them that's worth noting is that we deliberately had it on to give people a voice as we are now fine-tuning the programs that we're about to launch, including the mentoring program. And sure enough, there were ISECers in the room that were giving feedback to some of the things we said. And even since that, because that was the start of a conversation, we've now got Tony having regular conversations with Stefan in my group to make sure that when we say that this is a program that we're doing, which we are doing, and even if AIESEC didn't exist, we would be doing this for young alumni especially. If we're going to open that up to AIESEC, and clearly it should be, it's important for it to account for what AIESECers are looking for. So the rest of you in the room can now rely on the fact that that conversation is taking place between your regional folk and the alumni on the regional level, and it's been really productive. And there's Stefan, who's in the room with us now. Stefan is the guru of all things, but he's been the co-host with me of most of the alumni, and he does just a fantastic job. Okay, the second is continuous learning, which is now our way of describing things to do with the A-Talks, what we call A-Talks, which are webinars and what have you. And there's an alumni academy being developed and piloted in Latin America, and we will do the same. The reason I'm showing you this is because I used this one symbolically in my presentation to the global conversation yesterday and this morning. So there we have Gaurav on the right as being the leader of my Asia Pacific team running the 8 talks. But we opened that for Isuru and his team to co-manage, co-host, and co-promote if they wanted to. And they said yes. So it's been a pleasure for us to embrace Prayog in the actual process that leads up to that event. So if you go to one of these events, the A Talks, you will find that Gaurav and Prayog are welcoming people to the event. Why is this important? Because it gives greater impact to everything that either group does. If it means that more people show up in the room, that also means that the person presenting is going to feel better. If it means that instead of having 100 in the room, there are 500 in the room, that also ends up with sponsorship opportunities. And while the alumni, we don't care about having raising funds for our activities at the moment, but you do. So if we can build these sorts of things, even if it's primarily our resources in the alumni, but for the benefit of your programs financially, why the hell wouldn't we do that? So you'll find that the alumni, the A Talks we've now done it 9 months in a row, religiously every month. We've got the 9th one coming up, which I'll mention at the very end. Here we have the mentoring, and there's now a regular conversation that's been taking place between Tony from the Asia Pacific AP office, and Dirk's been absent at the moment because he's got other things on, but Stefan has been taking on this role for this. And the mentoring program is close, and it's going to be significant. We basically adopted a pilot that has been successful in the US. We've adapted it for what we already knew within Asia Pacific. And the bottom line is that this is alumni mentors serving whoever. We don't care whether it's young alumni or AIESEC. In other words, it's available to both. And I'm convinced this is going to be a very important program for all of us. And if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I didn't think we would do this on a regional basis. We were learning about it to encourage people to do nationally. But clearly the feedback we got was that you can do this regionally. And I saw someone in the room from Cambodia. Cambodia has now launched their mentoring program within Cambodia as well. So there are all kinds of things moving here. That's Bill, who's the one who's been leading the alumni in Cambodia. And we've just put him onto our team to be the face of entrepreneurial activities. So you're going to find right now, there is a conversation that I've now set up between Bill and his counterparts in the other 3 regions around the world. And they are brainstorming on what the entrepreneurial space should look like. And of course, you would think that there will be some overlap where we can open these things up to AIESEC or vice versa, and there'll be some collaboration. Okay, this I won't focus on, but for me, one of my babies at the moment, and it's a baby that's taking a long time to be born, is A Harmony, which for me is all about peer support. You will find, even as you leave AIESEC, there will be an anticlimax. It's time as an organization, we recognize that if you want to be productive, you want to be productive for as long as you can, it helps to have some focus on your mental and emotional health. Social impact, we've just, Joe is the lead for this as well, and that's a whole other conversation as well that's taking place within the alumni. Okay, moving forward. There are some very specific things. you can see from this presentation, there is now a conversation that has been institutionalized and is continuing. There is a tribe being built. So there's a tribe of ISEC, there's a tribe for the alumni, but there's what I refer to now as a global lifelong movement, which involves people in both communities, because of course you go from one to the other. I want to just stress three things coming up. One is the 9th Regional A Talk, which I'll show you something about in a moment. The next is the alumni we've got coming up, which is going to be based around that video you saw at the start. And the next is going to be, yes. So the next, which the important takeaway here is it's to be confirmed. But the idea that I've raised with the regional team, and it seems we're all on board, it's just a question of timing. I would love to do what they have now done in Latin America last month, I think it was. They managed to get into one Zoom call the alumni president and the MCP for 10 countries. And it was game-changing. It has started all kinds of really interesting conversations, and there's a real community that's being built up through that. And I would love to help have that sort of conversation within the AP region with incumbents and incoming and your counterparts in the alumni community. And just keep in mind, as my team knows, I can be a little bit cheeky. When you need someone in your country to assist you on something from the alumni, I'm actually the one who can say, I'm censoring myself, but do it. So this is an example, actually. So this is the regional A talk we've got coming up. This is on the 17th of May. You are all invited. Stefan will share in the chat in a minute a link to the event. It doesn't cost anything. Vikram Gandhi is one of the founders of ISEC in India. He is of that Gandhi clan. He was the PAI, not the one after me, not the one after him, but the one after him. I originally met Vikram at a congress in Coventry in 1981. So to give an example, when, with greatest respect, like he's a fantastic guy. He's now a professor for the Harvard Business School. So this is your opportunity to see what a Harvard presentation actually looks like. But fantastic guy. But whereas Gaurav, as a new alum, was finding it difficult to be clear, I guess, about the information that we required to get this thing confirmed. I'm the one who brought Vikram to the table, and I'm the one who said to Gaurav, set up a chat for me, yourself, Vikram. And when that chat started, I was able to say, hey, Vikram, I met up with an old friend of yours this morning, which was true, Teresa in Canada. And Teresa has got me to pass this message to you. Quote, get off your ass and give this stuff to the guys right now so that they can get this thing confirmed. And we all had a big laugh about it because this is about trust. We know each other. It's about friendships. And these people, like Vikram is a wonderful guy who only needs to be asked. And I know he's had a little bit of involvement to assist ISEC more recently in India, but he's a good example of the resources that are available that are yet largely untapped. Okay, that's the alumni coming up on May 29th, the journey. And we are going to focus on big issues. If you've ever wanted to have an honest conversation about whether ISEC should be political or not political, what does that mean? Are we already political because we support the UN SDGs? Is it good enough to focus on career? Can you have a balance between focusing on career and actually having an impact on the world around you? That's what that's going to be about. It's going to be really interesting. And I'm going to have a couple of folk who will present little short excerpts at the beginning from different regions, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Okay, so for me, when I became PAI, this was my favorite quote at the time. I got it copied, laminated, and every member of my team for an entire year had a copy of this in their pocket. The most important thing in life is not where you are, but the direction in which you're moving. And that is absolutely true for this whole thing. This whole conversation between ISEC and the alumni is going in the right direction, and that's all that counts. So that's the end of my little presentation. I thank you so much. I'm going to pass it back to, I'm not sure, to Asuru, I guess, and maybe then we can open up the floor to a Q&A. Just realize that there is another slide here with some contact details. Perhaps we can come back to that. No, that's going to be hard. Let's do that now. Before we go to the Q&A, let's do this. For anyone who wants, so if you want to reach out to me, that's my LinkedIn profile. There are 2 email addresses there for me as well. The most important thing I want you to take down though, and perhaps can I ask you, Stefan, to put it in so they can just do a copy and paste from the chat, is that one. Whoops. It's isaacalumniasiapacific@gmail.com. So if you want to continue a conversation to get to set up maybe a meeting with your counterparts in your country, or just have a chat with one of us about the challenges that brings, you can trust us, please. We're here to try to assist you in any way we can. So I would encourage you to do that. So having said that, now I'll pass it back and we can open it up for a Q&A.
Nice. Thank you so much. Yes. Sir, someone was speaking.
Unbelievably, we actually are going to time and we have our 15 minutes left.
Okay, let me see. Thank you so much, David, for the presentation and giving us all the information. One thing that we have been, one recommendation that comes from our side is that since that now we are moving to the planning process, and if you want to consider like what is the your alumni community NAA as like one of the stakeholder that you want to involve into this planning process, we highly recommend you to have this conversation before you move with starting the planning process. Then you will be able to understand what are the plans of them in the next coming year, and then you'll be able to see like, okay, what kind of resources or what kind of capacity that I need to allocate for my MC team in order to involve in this planning, as well as get the maximum out of this relationship between them. So that is one of the recommendations. So like in the next couple of weeks, if you can start this conversation with them, maybe talk to David, maybe talk to the regional office, or if you need a connection, if you already know the alumni, that will be really good. Then that is one of the recommendations from our side. As well as like now that you know like what are the things that are coming from the regional collaboration, which is the mentoring program. We have the A talks coming in monthly basis, and this will be something that you can already include it into your example. You can include into your ICOM planning, where you can promote these A talks monthly basis in your national pages or to your membership, or like maybe you can start add this to your membership program and encourage members to join with the mentoring program as well. So these are things that you can actually start doing right now, and that is one of the reasons that we are having this conversation right now with you. So yeah, if you have any questions, I think we have a couple of minutes left. Maybe you can ask them. Ellie, you can, yeah.
All right. Amazing presentation, David. It was very good to see you and hear all these amazing plans that we have for the alumni. And I saw that there was a lot of focus and a lot of willingness from the alumni to want to help out. We have a National Alumni Association in Pakistan. Bilal Chutani is the president. I think you met him or spoken to him, and he's always willing to help out. But the one question that I always have is, what can ISEC do to help the alumni out? Because I love the fact that they want to help us out, but then I would want that we can also give back to them in some way, for them to stay more engaged and for them to consistently want to be a part of our initiatives. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a really good question. Is it Ellie?
Eliezer, yeah.
Ellie? But that's a fantastic question. So yes, I've come to know Bilal over the last couple of years. Really fantastic guy, and his heart's in the right place for sure. Look, I guess there are three things that come to mind, maybe two or three. One is that, okay, so you've already acknowledged, you know, that a strong alumni is beneficial not only to alumni, but to ISEC as well, right? One of the things that you can do for sure, and this is true for everyone in the room, when you are seeking alumni involvement in an event or program that you're running, the first person to contact is someone on the NAA team in your country. It might take you a few more minutes to get the result you want, but I would encourage everybody to avoid the temptation of going to the alumni member who lives next door first, because that doesn't strengthen the alumni organization at all. When the alumni members know that the conversation between ISEC and the alumni is actually going through the NAA, that obviously starts to increase engagement of the alumni with the NAA, because that's one of the big challenges. So that's one. It's actually directing the communication through the team that exists. And that can be hard for you to find sometimes, which is why it's important to use us if you need to. The second really is that the big challenge with the alumni, like it's a huge, potentially it's just an unbelievable resource, right? It's about engagement. So for example, if there's anything that you do that might help the alumni organization in your country to increase engagement with their members, that's going to be helpful. So one very specific thing I mentioned before, you know, the journey, for example, that little video. So in the region, I'm the crazy one who suggested that we should have 4 different streams of content, and we should be able to release something of each one of them in consecutive weeks through the month. So we've got something to talk about every week. But the truth of it is, everyone in the alumni is volunteer, and we have struggled to get to the point where we've now got one that we really like, and we can do that one a month. So what am I doing? I've now opened that conversation with the other regions, where each one will produce a content stream of their own, and they will share it with us. So conversely, one of the recommendations I said to this morning's session on the global planning for a conversation with ISEC International is about content. ISEC is wonderful at producing content. I would love you to look at the things you already do to see whether or not any of them could be co-branded for the alumni to use for their community. So for example, I know in Australia, they've had this series where they'll do interviews with alumni. That's a perfect example. Why in God's name would we do the same thing? The perfect way is to co-brand that, logos of both organizations, shared with both communities, which makes whoever gave that interview in the first place feel even better. So that's an example. Content creation is actually a big one in my mind. The other is, I guess, just to engage, because if you now know that you've got all these alumni who are really there for the right reasons, who are really, it's like getting a battleship to start getting some momentum. Anything you can do to include them, support them. Again, specifically, one of those things for engagement is events. So rather than wait for someone to find out that you've got a national event coming up, let your NAA know, so that if you actually want some attendance, you want a speaker, or you want, like one of the things we talked about on a regional basis, if there's going to be if you've got the idea of having a gala event, why in heaven's name wouldn't you have a gala event that's co-branded between both organizations? You don't have to bother then about inviting alumni. They'll do that for you. You focus on the things you need to do, which is to make a really smooth event. And that's when the alumni can do what the alumni can do best. So I think there are all kinds of things. It's a really fantastic question. And I can't tell you how happy I am that you asked it, because that also shows that you're recognizing that there are long-term consequences here. Like you will be in the alumni shortly, you know, whether it's in 1 year or 2 or 3. So everything you contribute to the alumni right now has the potential of helping you later on. So thank you so much. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Thank you so much for the answer. This gave me a lot of clarification. It gave me a lot of clarification. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Can I just say as well, so with the regional aid talks that we have, that Prayog was good enough to talk about a moment ago, so that you guys know, you've got members who are trying to work out in their own minds, either why should they even, maybe not members, why should they join ISEC? Are there going to be entrepreneurial opportunities? We're in the startup space. Help me work out how to get my startup off the ground. Well, the aid talk that we had last month was from the former president of ISEC Alumni International. And when I realized how he had done his startup, I got him to present. His entire startup revolves around his alumni network, all of which dates back to when he was in ISEC. It's basically his friend network around which he based his multinational consulting firm. So these are the sort of topics that are now being provided that are absolutely relevant to you and your network. Asiru?
Yes, indeed. I think, yes, that is, this is something like we have been like, I think like we got more engagement in terms of air talks in the past couple of months, but we would love to like make sure that more especially for the membership level, I think that is something we are expecting as well. And I think like one conversation that we had, like I think in the beginning of the slides, David also put it there, like how this transformation should happen. Like that is one part of value proposition that we can provide to our membership. Like by joining AIESEC, you're not only being part of like AIESEC itself, but you are opening up to like a huge community and network after that. And that should be like something we can actually promote our membership as well. I think, David, I have one more question. I don't know whether maybe people need to clarify that as well. Is there any minimum criteria to become an alumni or part of alumni organization? Or like, because right now, I think like our generation of leadership is going to change, which means a huge part of our AIESECers are going to become alumni. So like, do you have anything, maybe like they can talk to their current membership, any minimum recommendation, minimum criteria to become alumni part of organization?
It's a fantastic question as well. And it's a big question. So I'll answer it this way. My opinion is that why am I giving my time to an alumni organization? My opinion is that this is about impact. So my view is to be inclusive, right? I would much rather have 1,000 folk in that tribe than the 10 former MCPs of a country. Yep, so two extremes. Because I have no interest in being part of an elite organization. I want it to be an excellent organization, and I want it to do things that count. So my view is that I will embrace someone who wants to join the alumni, whether they've been active in AIESEC, whether they've been a member in AIESEC, whether they've gone on a traineeship, whether they were in it for 5 minutes or 5 years. I don't care. Whatever those reasons were that affected that involvement at the time are in the past. For me, someone who's been active in AIESEC for 5 years will benefit by having in his alumni community someone who might have been in AIESEC for 5 minutes, wants to be part of the alumni community, and can give him a career introduction, or might be there with an incredible startup, or might 20 years later be the minister in the New Zealand prime government, like James Shaw is. But he was one of the active ones, by the way, I've got to say that. So I'm inclusive on those things. Now, you'll find that is my opinion. Now, I am pushing that. You'll find this is a conversation that is now taking place globally, because we're trying to come up with some uniform procedures for membership around the world. And it even covers things like membership fees. So you'll find within Asia Pacific, the honest answer to your question is it depends. Some countries have different views on this. You might have different views on this. Like, I bet you if we poll the room, you are going to have different views on this. And I would only caution you in this way. When you're heavily involved in AIESEC, you can make the mistake of thinking that whilst you deserve the benefits of this lifelong connection, those who might have been lazy or left or weren't really very good don't. That is an unproductive approach to it. I can assure you that the same person who is letting you down right now because they've got 100 other things on their plate could actually be your greatest ally in 5 years' time. So for me, I would encourage you to be inclusive. And what you will find, in answering that question, you're going to find this is something that is being dealt with now. You might ask me the same question in 2 months' time, and I might have a very clear answer, which is that there's been a decision taken across the global organization. But at the moment, it does vary. So any one of you could ask me what that answer is for your country, and I can probably tell you. And I can probably tell you whether I like it or not too. Okay, Asuru.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Anyone else has any questions? We have 2 more minutes before we wrap up the space.
I have one question I want to ask David. Like, I don't know, like I have been interacting with you a lot over the past courses of delivering the past 8 talks and all. I really want to know, like, what is your inspiration continuing serving back to this community? Like, maybe was it like some key moment in your ISEC experience which is driving you to do this, or what inspires you to still lead ISECers?
It's a good question, and you're not the only one to ask me that. But the answer might surprise you. So for me, one of my mantras to the alumni is that the alumni organization needs to serve its members first, right? So it needs to be selfish in this sense, because when you ask members of the alumni what's important to them, let's say you poll them, and let's say they give 5 answers. What's important in their life? How can an alumni organization be relevant for them? This varies according to age and their status in life, but it will include things like what's important to them: my family, my friends, my career, having a sense of purpose in my life, all these sorts of things. And what you'll find is that whereas you in the room right now are all within probably 4 or 5 years of each other in terms of age, I'm assuming that there's no one here that's married or has 5 kids. But it means that when you're trying to work out the synergies between you and your membership, it might be challenging for you, but it's reasonably clear. You're at the beginning of your careers, for example. You're still finding out what your passions are. When you now look at the same sort of spread from the age of, like, people will come into the alumni as early as, let's say, 20, 21, all the way up to death. That now means that the passions of those people has broadened, it's expanded, it's all kinds of stuff. The funny thing is that the thing that drives their involvement in the alumni, and it could be another organization equally well, is the same. For me, for example, I have always felt from the time I was a teenager that I was following my star. I may not know where it's going, but for me, having a certain feeling of purpose has always been important. So I've made certain choices in my life that may not have been aimed at having the most lucrative career, but are things that have still felt very important to me. And in the end, you'll find that everyone does this for different reasons. But for me, that's one of them. So when I ask me why I'm passionate about the mentoring program, it's because if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, I already know that with Stefan's involvement, with Tony's involvement, with the broad consensus that it's needed, there will now be a mentoring program. It will, over the next 50 years, serve hundreds and hundreds of young people coming through. And that makes me feel good. And let's be clear, each of you folk in the regional team, for example, it has become part of your legacy already. You know, everything. And I would say everyone in the room who is, for example, an MC elect, an MCP elect, this is important for you too. You're going to find that all the reasons that have brought you to the table now, those reasons are not going to change. The one thing I would foreshadow for all of you, though, is that when you're really dedicated to try to balance these crazy things on your time, whether it's your family, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, the call of ISEC, your university studies, all these things, you really will find that and expect it. There's an anticlimax when you leave ISEC. And that's one of the reasons why this bridge between ISEC and the alumni is so important. It's because you will find that actually the opportunities to continue this feeling of contribution and purpose remains. You basically got to take a deep breath, look after yourself physically so that you can take advantage of it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, this isn't hard. The hardest thing for me is actually to manage my time in such a way that this doesn't become all-consuming. So you'll find I try to tell all my members of my team, compartmentalize the time you're giving to the alumni, have it in certain times of the day so that it doesn't consume everything you do, because you will find it is costly if you're not careful. It literally, there's a literal lost opportunity in terms of income. So you've got to be very careful to balance that stuff. Anyway, so, and I guess, look, at the end of the day, really, I find it fun. You know, I love these conversations. It's no chore. I didn't miss spending time with my girlfriend today on Mother's Day because I didn't want to spend time with her on Mother's Day. It's because she understands that I felt that today, not only was there a report I had to give in the morning, but I needed to make sure I finalized things for this session. These are really important for me. And for me, that other principle is the most amount of joy for the most number of people. So I would cut off my index finger if I felt that that was going to have a significant positive impact for a bunch of people. That's who I am. And I'm sure many of you feel exactly the same way. So that's why it's a privilege. And I know we're going to wrap up. So I really appreciate the opportunities to share these things with you guys. Thank you so much, Isiru, and the rest of you. It's really like I said, it's a real privilege for me.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, David. Yeah, so I think we're out of time. So thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. I think maybe we can take a picture with everyone and then we can close the space.
Isiru, can I do
yes.
one last thing, please? And I know I should have said this before. Can you spotlight Stefan? Is Stefan still in the room?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that, yeah. So really, I want you guys to get to know Stefan. Stefan has been a wonderful attribute to the team. And the fact of it is, Stefan was in ISEC like really 5 minutes ago. I stole him while he was still LCP of Monash. And this for me is how we build these bridges. So I want you guys to know that, you know, the alumni is of all ages, and Stefan is an incredibly valuable part of the Asia Pacific team. So say hi, Stefan.
Hi, Stefan.
Thank you, Isiru. Oh, good.
Amazing. Nice. Amazing. Thank you so much. So let's take a picture. In 3, you can open your camera. And 3, 2, and 1. Nice. I think everyone is here. Thank you so much, David and Stefan, for being here with us, and hope to see a lot of good things happening between NAAS as well as the region. See you.
Oh, good. Bye-bye, everybody. Stay in touch, please.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Stefan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.